we're going to get some public health folks on at 8. So that's also pretty cool because then we can talk to them about their look back in the last year. Maybe we even ask about the next one too. 7:34, another familiar face from Containing COVID and the link as well. Dr. Peter Lombard joins us in the KUAM News Zoom room. Good morning, Doc.
Good morning, Chris. Good morning, Sabrina.
Good
How
morning.
are you?
We're doing good. Let's just start there. So reflecting back on the last year, I mean, you were with us from, reporting zeros and ones before the second surge to just right down in the trenches with us, predicting the number of deaths that we were going to have from COVID-19. So the highs and the lows, you were right here with the people of Guam. So really value your perspective. And what are you kind of thinking? Because I think we're all going through this like inventory in our minds of what happened in the last year. And some of us, I feel like in my case, this thing just went so fast and we were in here like every day and I didn't really have time to kind of sit and think about a lot of things until recently. So, and I know a lot of people are kind of going through that same thing. So go ahead, Doc. What are your thoughts on this last year?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting listening to your show the past few days and weeks. It's sounding more like a eulogy to COVID, the way everybody's reflecting.
Right.
But, first, I'd love to say thanks for having Mayor Hoffman on. And boy, we are so lucky to have public servants like him. I mean, he is just an amazing mayor. And as someone who lives in Sanahani, whose business is in Sanahani, I'm so grateful. I feel so fortunate to have him as our leader here. No, I think when looking back, I think a lot of what we're feeling is fear of the unknown, and we didn't know which way this was going to go. We had a little bit of confidence, overconfidence in the summer months, and then you saw just the horrendous numbers in the late summer and fall. And that really, it could have gone either way. We could have kept going in that direction, but thankfully, with consistent measures in place, we were able to turn things around. And now that we've had a number of good, consistent low months, and the vaccine rollout is going well, that I think we're all starting to take a deep sigh of relief, and that just pit of fear of not knowing what's going to happen, I think is subsiding to a significant degree. You just have expert after expert coming on and saying that we're probably through the worst of it, while the variants are still a concern, and while, by the way, there are some parts of the world which are still going through the worst of it right now. Brazil, Eastern Europe, their numbers are horrible right now. As bad as we've seen in any other country at any time. It's that bad right now there. So, got to be super lucky. I was looking at our population fatality rate. That you just take the total number of deaths that we've had from COVID and divide it by our population, and we've had less than 1 out of 10,000 of our people die from COVID. And there are some counties in the United States where that number is 1 out of 250, and it's just an astounding number. So even if we did perhaps undercount some of our deaths, and that's possible. I think when the final mortality numbers come out for the season and for 2020, we're going to see that there were a lot more deaths than should have happened, and we didn't account them. But even if we did undercount them, we still, our report card in terms of, population fatality is pretty good. But you've always got to compare yourself to yourself and say, how much better could we have been? And that's the other side of this. And that's what I think a lot of the reflection is going back to saying, how did we do? And what could we have done different, better? How do we prepare next time? Because, that's still 135 people that didn't make it through this, and perhaps even more. You guys feeling very grateful for where we are today.
Doc, there was a point late last year where we had you on, and just going over the statistics and tracking the number of deaths that we were going to see. And I remember you would kind of predict that, hey, we're going to see 9 deaths in the next 2 weeks. And there was a couple times where we prayed to God you were going to be wrong. Like, I just wanted you to be so wrong. Like, I wanted you to be like...
I didn't even want you to come on. I was like, no, I don't want to hear it. No.
But I wanted you to be like Dr. Cabrera first doomsday projection wrong. Like, every time, right? But you weren't, And so... what was it kind of like? Because I know that in the medical profession, right, there's a certain amount of, like, you have to detach, I guess, right? and kind of take a look back. So, and reporting these very real numbers and making these very real predictions, as kind of the same thing was going on around the world. How did you kind of take that task to heart?
Well, I think we definitely learned to compartmentalize. Everybody learns how to do that to some degree. You got your work, and then you come home. You got to compartmentalize whatever's happening at work. So, when you're doing, exercises like this, I think you just go into the details that, for right or wrong, you kind of try to just take your emotion out of it and just you want to provide useful information for people, and however doomsday might sound or appear, I think knowing what's coming, for some people at least, knowing what's coming, having an actual perception of what is actually happening out there, I think is important to a lot of people, because you're hearing a lot of stuff from a lot of different people, and some of them are very wrong. So it's nice to have a true interpretation of what's actually happening out there. So that's what I tried to provide, and honestly, it was as much for me as for anybody else. I kind of just feel like I need to wrap my head around the situation and what we're in for. Partly because too, we all wanted to have a lot of faith in our leadership and our public health system, but at the same time, we're especially when we didn't know what was going on, you're kind of like, what if they're missing something, And I think that was a lot of what you guys do, is what if they're missing something, or they're not saying something that's 100% true. We want to know those sort of things rather than be surprised by them later. So I think there was a lot of extra effort going in to try to even pick apart the plan and the numbers that we're seeing. So I definitely think transparency and consistency in the messaging there was some that could have been a little bit better on. I think the governor did a self-assessment, and was, as she said,
we're the most transparent
pretty
ever.
proud of the job that we've done. And again, if you look at our numbers, there's a lot. There is a lot to be proud of, but at the same time, I don't think I find it hard to believe any leader of any successful organization would think that there's nothing could have been done differently. I mean, there's always things that could have been improved on, even if it's just speed. I personally, looking back, I'd say, look at our contact tracing manpower, I think was lacking. I think our testing capacity could have been better. I think rolling out some of these technology applications could have been done a little bit quicker and or more robustly.
Yeah, Doc. I mean,
especially early on getting a good data dashboard. I mean, there's so many things you could say that could have been improved on.
It was kind of mind-boggling. I mean,
I look at the numbers, and it's hard to argue with where.
Right, but you definitely don't want to give yourself an A+ when 135 people died. When 100 or tens of thousands of people lost their jobs. Whether or not that was your fault. But yeah, right. I was kind of like, don't do that. Don't give yourself an A+. Humble it out a little bit.
Well, I think just throughout this past year, you really helped us a lot here at KUAM, because every time there was a presentation, sometimes it wasn't easy to understand. And so when you came on and you helped flesh out other people's numbers, then you provided your numbers. It just made it easier, I think, for people just listening at home to digest and to interpret in English and in layman's terms. So, I'm really appreciative, because I think you were very integral in reaching the masses and letting them understand and warning them what was to come. So thank you so much.
What I think was key about you, Doc, was that you weren't part of the establishment, right? Where I think because of just like because the governor, lieutenant governor, the senators, even, they're all politicians, right? So, and these doctors in the PAG, I mean, I know that for the most part, they want to give us, honest and accurate and real information, but some of those that are really folded into this response can't, because of the political ramifications or, the political messaging. And so I think that's why people appreciated what you kind of brought to the table, because it was a truly independent look at the numbers, and there wasn't like I didn't feel like you were skewing the numbers or you were trying to like fabricate any kind of metric from those numbers, and I think that's why people were kind of into it. And I would get like messages from senators, mayors, talking about your presentations on this show. So I know that people were definitely paying attention.
Well, thank you for those kind of comments. I mean, we all come with our own personal biases, some that we don't even know that we have. And it was frustrating to see that even within my own professional circles. And I try to be understanding, though. Sometimes you don't even know the biases that you have, and somebody tries to explain that to you, you sort of get a little bit defensive about it. So, it was a stressful time for everybody. So I'm grateful that if I did play a small part in trying to explain what's happening out there, then that makes me feel like it was worthwhile. So thank you.
Of course. What do you got? You got any? You've been crunching stats lately. I know the numbers have been really low, so I'm kind of curious what your take is on the data.
Well, we talk about the data. Initially, we were asking for we got 5 new cases. Tell us more about that. Initially, it was like, gosh, where do these 5 cases come from? And now we're, some days we see 0, and then you'll see one day where you see 6 or 7 cases, and you're like, that's interesting. Well, where are they? Where are they coming from? I think that's kind of interesting right now. It's not as scary as it used to be, but at the same time, you're like, well, where could those cases have possibly come from? If our numbers are so low, why can't we get to 0? So those sort of questions are still there, but overall, when you look at where we are, we talk about mobility. I don't have any charts for you today, sorry, but I did look at our most recent.
No, this interview is over. Boy, you're just mailing it in now. You're like, PCOR 3, I don't need no charts.
Yeah, sorry to disappoint you guys. But yeah, we're still a little bit below the baseline. We're about maybe 12-15% below baseline. We've been ticking up a few days, have gone above the baseline, but overall we're still not moving around, at least by driving data, as much as we used to. And it looks like about half of our recent cases have been identified in quarantine. And that's a whole nother topic on its own. I mean, I think that definitely you can point to those positive cases that we identify in quarantine as a success story for us. But then you look at a place like Hawaii, and it's like, you don't want to compare too much, but hey, they're an island. They're much bigger than we are. They get a lot more international travelers than we do. They don't have government quarantine, and they've still been able to, just using pre-test PCRs or pre-travel PCRs, they've still been able to keep their numbers down, which has actually been an extremely surprising result for them. They have so many people still vulnerable because they haven't had a major surge like we had. So I've just been astounded. They've been so, gratefully, so wonderful that they've been able to do as well as they could. But is that an example of a well-implemented program that could still keep positive cases out? Because I think again, the worst thing that could happen now is we get one of these really bad variants here, and which have been shown to have fatality and increased lethality. But even the Pfizer vaccine, and which it seems like most of our population has had the Pfizer, has activity against these variants, as you guys have heard of by now. So I'm really feeling pretty confident about where we are. We just have many less susceptible people. And what was the primary endpoint of the vaccine is decrease the serious cases and decrease the number of deaths. So even if our cases do happen to rise from a variant, I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of serious cases and deaths out there. Just to touch briefly on our vaccination numbers, the goal, I read an article, 50% of the adult population, so that's about 62,000 people they'd like to see vaccinated by before May 1st. I think that's super ambitious. I think if you want to talk partially vaccinated, I think that's possible, but I don't think it's realistic for full 2 doses. But partial vaccination and 62,000 adults in Guam is fantastic. I think that's partial vaccination is better than no vaccination, and whether or not they're going to use the partial vaccination as saying we got to 50%, I think that remains to be seen. And it still would be a very good success story for Guam if we're able to get there. We're still doing very well comparatively to the rest of the U.S. states, but we're about 18% fully vaccinated and only about 22% partially vaccinated. When some states have now far surpassed even Guam in terms of the partially vaccinated. But if we get all remaining shots that are on island right now, if we use all those as a first vaccination, we'll be at about 58,000. So that's already pretty close to the 62,000 goal that was stated previously. So, things are looking good on the vaccination front, and it would be great to get to that point by May 1st. But one point I make: if you look at the vaccination numbers for our local travel, big travel sources, Japan, PI, North Korea, they're abysmally low. I mean, like incredibly low numbers of vaccinated people from Japan. The Philippines is probably the worst, and even North Korea, who's been a super success story and how they've handled the pandemic. I don't understand why they're not vaccinating faster. It's really mind-boggling, and they're a big source of tourism for us. So even if we open our doors and say come to us, I don't know how comfortable. Well, I don't. There's two sides to it. How comfortable are they sending people here, but also how comfortable are we receiving people who have not been vaccinated? So that's another aspect to the story which hasn't been discussed very much.
Well, Doc, I would definitely thank you for coming on and looking back with us. Hey, and I mean, it's not over, so maybe we get you on in a few weeks to just kind of, check out what you're crunching and bring charts next time. No charts, no entry.
All right, I'll throw something together for you.
Right on. Have a good weekend, Doc, and appreciate your service.
Okay, thanks for having me on.
Okay, I'll see you. Jay, next time you got to check in for charts. Dude, you're supposed to be the gatekeeper.
Well, I was actually going to say I've got two things in common with Dr. Lombard. Is one we both took a very, very concerted interest in looking at the data from COVID, and two, our hair was decidedly darker when the pandemic started. Yeah. Both of us, we side message each other. It's like, dude, I think I've got you beat. Is it? No, I think I've got you beat this week.
Well, we posted that 1 year containing COVID anniversary clip, and my hair was way darker.
You were still a brunette, technically.
So I guess it's true what they say about stress and worry, and you're giving me gray hairs. And because I never believed my grandma. I was like, that's scientifically impossible for me to give you gray hairs, Grandma. Well, guess what? It's true. Like so many things our elders say, it's true. Let's keep in the